if you're going to claim that somebody committed a crime. It's a pretty slimy tactic to use the word insurrection over and over and over and over and over again, and yet try to hide the fact that the gentleman who's sitting here before us today, who was responsible for prosecuting many of the people on January 6th, never once charged anybody with violating 18 U.S.C. section 2383. You never charged anybody with violating that statute. You never convicted anybody with violating that statute. So sitting here and using that word over and over again means absolutely nothing.
Hey everyone. Welcome back to Congress Lens. It's Audrey here. Today, we're diving into a really eye-opening video from Forbes breaking news titled, "Who Ordered the Removal of the 500 Bike Racks and Why?" Hageman grills ex-FBI agents about January 6th. I have to say, right off the bat, Representative Harriet Hageman comes in with precision and courage. She's not afraid to ask the hard questions that many others have been ignoring, especially when it comes to the safety failures at the Capitol on January 6th. And honestly, watching her hold these former FBI agents accountable? That's exactly the kind of leadership we need in Congress. Someone who demands answers and refuses to let anyone sweep important details under the rug. We're about to watch some of the most heated and revealing moments from this hearing, and I want you to pay attention to Hageman's approach, calm, methodical, and relentless. But before we jump in, if you care about government accountability and following the real facts behind major events, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode from Congress Lens. Now, let's roll the snippet and see Hageman in action.
As this gentlelady from Wyoming.
Ranking member indicated that the first lesson that you teach lawyers is you better bring the evidence with you. But another lesson that we learn is that you should also know the elements of the crime and the relevant statute if you're going to claim that somebody committed a crime. It's a pretty slimy tactic to use the word insurrection over and over and over and over and over again, and yet try to hide the fact that the gentleman who's sitting here before us today, who was responsible for prosecuting many of the people on January 6th, never once charged anybody with violating 18 U.S.C. section 2383. You never charged anybody with violating that statute. You never convicted anybody with violating that statute. So sitting here and using that word over and over again means absolutely nothing. We are here today focusing on the pipe bomb because of what happened that day. It clearly played a pivotal role in facilitating the breach of the Capitol, and we need to get to the bottom of what happened there. These devices were discovered outside the RNC and DNC within 20 minutes of the joint session, and the U.S. Capitol Police were forced to defy the forces while a crowd of protesters moved towards the Capitol. The U.S. Capitol Police was not dealing with just the force division, but also with the fact that 500 bike racks had been removed the night before. Who ordered the removal of the 500 bike racks and why? The staff of the architect of the Capitol testified that the evening of January 5th, roughly around the time the pipe bombs were allegedly planted, the order came down to remove 500 bike racks from around the Capitol. Mr. Pajota, can bike racks help law enforcement with crowd control and deterrence?
Absolutely. They form a physical barrier between the crowd and a protected location, or they can be used to help funnel a crowd to or from a location.
Well, can they also serve as a visual cue for non-law enforcement personnel about what lines they are not allowed to cross? And could removing them spell legal jeopardy for protesters who cannot identify what is the line of trespass?
It creates ambiguity for the public. They don't know where those barriers are.
And did this actually result in legal jeopardy for many of the people who were on the Capitol grounds on January 6th?
It ended up that way.
Okay. According to the Select January 6th Committee's final report, quote, at 1:28 p.m., the U.S. Capitol Police requested the AOC to deliver 400 additional bike racks to the East Front to serve as protective barriers, even though rioters were using bike racks as weapons. The pipe bomb discovery at the DNC prevented the AOC from delivering them, end quote. Clearly, the Capitol Police viewed the bike racks as a necessary tool for that day, and their removal is absolutely baffling And this subcommittee should focus on identifying who gave that order, why, when, who was involved. We need to get to the bottom of this. And the previous January 6th committee didn't look into it. They're not the ones who actually investigated what happened here and why. This statement is also clear that the impacts of the pipe bombs continue to be felt by the U.S. Capitol police officers responding to the incident. And Mr. Pajota, does this raise even more questions about why the Ray FBI did not take this pipe bomb investigation seriously?
The Ray FBI did not prioritize this investigation. Again, I think their resources and their attention was split into the other events of January 6th. And over time, what we saw was I would say, a weak or inept case management approach where this investigation eventually stalled.
Okay. Mr. Especial, do you have anything that you would like to briefly add to the discussion today?
I think that probably the biggest takeaway in all of this is that there are 1,600 American citizens that were baited into a trespass trap to a great extent. Yes, certainly, absolutely, some of them were violent, and investigations and prosecutions were warranted. But I have an estimate that it was almost $1 billion that was spent on prosecuting American citizens. It's a lot of money that we spent on trying to prosecute patriotic American citizens. And then you add on top of that the thousands of American citizens that, like myself, that were also weaponized against in order for deterrence purposes, all the tactical resources. It was really a terror campaign. I would refer you to the National Counterterrorism reports available on my website, and it's highlighted where they want an FBI domestic terrorism statute, quote, for deterrence purposes. They want to be able to silence free speech. They did that with all of this. And, the cause, bottom line is 51 intelligence officers memo, Hunter Biden laptop. It's all these things where the American citizens that showed up that day were at their wits' end on having faith in their government. And they were vulnerable, as I warned, they were vulnerable.
Well, and I think Hunter Biden is a good name to bring forward when you talk to with Mr. Romano here when we talk about the appropriateness of pardons. Mr. Nance, do you have anything to very briefly add?
I think one of the biggest things that the American people need to take away from this is the understanding that how dangerous narrative-led investigations can be, because I think what we have going on here in large measure are narratives driven by the Biden White House through the Garland DOJ, and these are, of course, communications happening, headquarters to headquarters. And Director Wray, as any leader can present the commander's intent without explicitly doing so. So if he's getting communications from his boss, who is the Attorney General, that the narrative needs to be, we need to prioritize and stick with the J6 insurrection narrative, the pipe bomber narrative, or the pipe bomber investigation, in my opinion, was deprioritized because of that narrative coming from potentially the White House.
Well, I appreciate your testimony. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being willing to expose this. With that, I yield back.
Gentleman.
Just wow. Watching Representative Harriet Hageman in this hearing was honestly refreshing. She didn't just throw around buzzwords like insurrection. Instead, she called out the misuse of that term and reminded everyone that no one was ever charged under the actual insurrection statute, 18 U.S.C. Section 2383. That's a huge point, because it exposes how narratives can sometimes overshadow the facts, and Hageman didn't let that slide. Then she drilled down on something that frankly blew my mind: the removal of 500 bike racks the night before the Capitol breach. Think about that for a second. These weren't just random objects. They're essential tools for crowd control, visual cues, and physical barriers that protect law enforcement and the public. And yet, no one has ever fully explained who ordered their removal or why. Hageman brought this issue to the forefront in a way that's both logical and necessary, especially when you consider the legal ambiguity it created for people on the Capitol grounds. Her questioning of the former FBI agents about the pipe bomb investigation also hit hard. Hageman pointed out that Director Wray and the FBI didn't prioritize the investigation, which led to stalled cases and resource mismanagement. She exposed the gaps in accountability, and she didn't let the agents dodge responsibility. And I have to highlight how she framed this as an issue affecting everyday American citizens, not just politicians or the media narrative. She emphasized that roughly 1,600 citizens were baited into a trespass trap, and millions were spent prosecuting them. Hageman's focus here is pragmatic and people-centered, not partisan theater. What I really love is that Hageman combines fact-based reasoning with moral clarity. She doesn't yell or grandstand. She simply asks the questions everyone wants answered. Who removed the bike racks? Why wasn't the pipe bomb investigation prioritized? And why are Americans being put in jeopardy because of mismanagement and narrative-driven investigations? At the end of the day, this is a clear example of Congress doing its job the right way, digging into overlooked facts, demanding accountability, and standing up for citizens' rights. If more representatives approached issues like Hageman, I think we'd see far less political theater and far more results. Honestly, this hearing made me respect Harriet Hageman even more. She's methodical, fearless, and unafraid to confront uncomfortable truths, and that's exactly the kind of leadership that Congress needs right now. If you watched this with me and felt the same way, let me know in the comments which part of the hearing shocked you the most. And remember, if you haven't already, subscribe to Congress Lens for more in-depth reactions and analysis from Capitol Hill. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next.